Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. My name is David Baer, and today we're going to be talking about branding, personal branding specifically. And if when you hear the word branding, you're thinking about colors and imagery and what the general public thinks when they hear your name or your business name, that's not exactly what we're talking about. But it does have a little bit to do with the way that people think of you compared to the way that people are thinking about other people who might do what you do or other businesses that might be in the same space that you're in. To help me in this conversation, we're going to be chatting with Dr. Angela Mulrooney, who figured this out for herself years ago when she was in the dental profession and had to then figure out how to utilize positioning and branding for that business and a few others that you're going to hear about as well. So why don't we welcome Dr. Angela Mulrooney. Hey there.
Hi, how's it going, David?
I'm great. And I've had the opportunity to do a little bit of reading about you. I've watched a couple of talks you've given. And one of the themes that I have seen throughout some of the material that I've uncovered is this theme about fire, right? You use this nickname, the arsonist, and you speak about the phoenix rising from the ashes and a bunch of other things. And I'm curious, does that have anything to do with personal branding?
Absolutely, it does.
That's by the way, that's what we call a softball question.
There you go. So, yeah, the theme of my life, whether I wanted it to be or not, was I was always presented with situations where I had to make a choice, and often the only choice was to burn something down that I built and rebuild. So, with my dental career, I ended up being injured. And so the beautiful brand that I built in the Calgary community, a referral-based practice for people who are afraid of the dentist, I got injured. That brand kind of got burnt down. We had to rise back a practice that was more basic because people didn't want to deal with people who were afraid of the dentist. Then when I moved on from that, it was reinvention after reinvention. And really the past almost 9 years have been me trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be in this world without a drill in my hand. Because since I was 2, I wanted to be a dentist. So when I was 32 and the injury happened, it was brutal. It totally turned my world upside down and set me on this path of figuring out who I was outside of dentistry. And so that is a big part of my brand, is because I've had to burn things down and reinvent so many times. I'm very good at handing people a mat and giving them permission to burn the things down that aren't working so they can pivot to what they actually want to do with their life.
That's brilliant. I saw on your website, one of your clients said something along the lines of the fact that you're going to tell her, or you're going to tell people what they don't really want to hear, but how when you told her it changed her life. And
Yes.
And I imagine that, sometimes we have to give people the truth about, hey, if you really want this outcome, what you're doing right now isn't going to work. And here's some different directions to consider.
Yes. And well, often they know that too. Like the one you're specifically referring to, Pollyanna Mitchell, she was on a path of something that was dragging her away from what she wanted to do. So she's getting pulled into her past instead of propelling to her future. And so once she got the match and was able to burn that down, now she's skyrocketed into her new potential. And for her, she knew she needed to do that, but everyone else was like, well, you should do this, you should do that. And people were shooting all over her, telling her what she should do, because that was their perspective. They were afraid for her to let go of that past. And she knew she would have a much brighter future stepping into her future of what she really wanted to do, what her passion was. And once she burned that down, again, it released her to do great things. And those people who come to me, they always have that pull to the past that they're being told they should keep, and they really want to move into something new.
I want to talk a little bit about this term personal branding, because it's it's very much not what most people think of when they hear the word branding, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what it is, what it isn't, and then after we have a good basic understanding there, we can talk about how you actually can use it to the advantage of your business. So let's start with the what is personal branding part.
Sure. So personal branding really is putting yourself out there as the expert in what you're doing. So you could be the face of a bigger corporate company. You could be an employee trying to find a job. There's lots of different ways that you could be leveraging your personal brand. The reason personal branding has really come to the forefront is people want to know the person behind the work. So they're not just looking for that perfect website, that perfect logo, that perfect tagline. They're looking to understand who the human is that they're investing in, whether that's an employer, whether that is a potential client. And so we know people are going to creep on you. If they're thinking they're maybe going to do business with you, or maybe they're going to hire you, they're going to start digging into your social media. They're going to start figuring out on the internet who you actually are. And if you don't have a personal brand, who knows what's out there? If you have been working on your personal brand, you have the ability to control the narrative about what you're actually doing. And to me, that's far less risky than leaving it up to fate. And something that was happening 10 years ago that's totally not on brand on it anymore. It comes to the forefront and people are like, that doesn't seem like a good thing. So you have the ability to showcase what you are an expert in. You can direct people to what you're passionate about. And especially if you're going through a pivot, you're not trying to stay locked to your past. You're trying to build that future forward of the expertise that you're doing. And that's what your personal brand can really do for you.
The creep part you mentioned, you and I both did that to each other, didn't we? Like in advance of this conversation, I wanted to learn a little bit more about you. I got a very clear sense of who you are. There was no confusion, right? You've been very intentional about what you put out there. I hope I've done a reasonably good job. You mentioned something that I had just posted on LinkedIn that you had read. But that's very much the way that we interact with people compared to, it's really a modern era internet thing, right? You didn't have access to all of this stuff in the 80s or the 50s or what have you.
Yes. Well, even when I was a dentist, like I graduated in 2004, most people didn't have a website, right? When I had my practice, I was top of Google for my practice with my website because most people didn't have a website and they weren't doing optimization. And I remember, Facebook was starting to get popular back then. And we would look up potential employees on Facebook. And, if they're posing in a bikini, it was scandalous. We don't want someone like that in our practice. And now it's like, if you don't have a bikini picture, like you're not, you're not doing things right. So it's really interesting how things have shifted from being taboo. And, it was almost like inappropriate that we were looking them up on Facebook to now it's like, if you're not looking them up, what are you doing? And you're kind of going into something blind. So our mentality has shifted significantly, even over the last 2 decades, even the last decade.
So there's one thing that we talk about in marketing in general that I think is also very applicable in the personal branding space. And I'm curious to get your take on this. And it's that because you can't be for everyone, you have to find ways to be very clear about who you are for. And one of the ways to do that is to be polarizing. To be very clear about your opinion, your perspective, your worldview, etc. Obviously, when you're looking for a job, that might not be a good idea, as you just described with the scandalous bikini on on Facebook. But there are things that when you are trying to attract clients or referral partners, et cetera, that polarization probably can help with. I'm interested in getting your take on this.
Yes. Well, I think if you're walking the line of trying to be likable, then you're probably not actually being true to who you are. And you said try to create marketing so people understand who you are for. I think personal branding is about who you are, not who you are for. So you're being true to who you actually are, which is going to polarize people. People are going to love you. They're going to hate you. The people who hate you, they might troll you. They might write some nasty things on your content, but are they who you're actually going to put your energy into? No. The people who just kind of like you, they're probably not going to become clients because they're about how you are. And if you're developing a whole bunch of audience who likes you, again, you're probably not actually being who you really are. But then you're going to have the people who love you that really relate to what you're doing. They see themselves in your story. They go, oh, that person's been there. They've done it. They're 5 years ahead of me. I want to learn from them. And so you have the opportunity to actually get rid of a whole bunch of potential leads that are not a good fit by actually being who you are. And if you don't share the same values, if you don't feel like you have the same personality type, they don't feel like you'd be someone that they could spend time with or that they want to spend their money with, that's a great thing. You just eliminated a whole bunch of time wasters. And now you can focus on the people who are actually more likely to buy. You might have fewer phone calls, but my guess is your closing rate is going to increase significantly.
So the piece that I had just posted on LinkedIn that you mentioned, I hope I started to do that, because I sort of said, these types of businesses are doing a bad job at something and they should do this instead or something like that. And so anybody who disagreed with me automatically was going to go away, but it was hopefully clear about, where I stood. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. You want to own where you're at. You want to own your information. You want to own your expertise. And what is happening with personal branding is it's not black and white anymore. What the truth is, what is the path forward for marketing? There is 100 ways to do things. And so it's becoming more colorful how we can actually approach things, which is a wonderful thing, because someone with my personality type versus someone who is, very slow and steady, very cautious, we are going to approach things completely differently. But someone who is used to doing it that way and it worked for them, they can teach someone like that very, very well. Whereas someone like me, who is really blow everything up that's in your way and let's get to it, is not going to be for everybody. And so you're going to have people who totally disagree with you, because you can do things so many different ways, but you need to get comfortable and own who you are, where you're at, what your experience is, what your expertise is, and what your opinion is, because that is going to be your bread and butter. That's what is going to make you the master in your topic, is actually having an opinion, actually having a roadmap, having an expertise that you're going to share with the world, because people are going to be looking for that specific expertise. And you're going to find the right people. You're going to push away the wrong people. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
So if it's okay with you, I want to use the model that you have set, branding yourself, to sort of to put to dimensionalize this, because you've made some very intentional decisions about things like the arsonist name. You have incorporated aspects of your interest and passion, dance specifically, right? You do a lot of speaking out there, and I've just seen one piece where you incorporated movement into your presentation style, and that's likely going to both draw some people in and push some people away. And I want to sort of understand what your thought process in building some of that was, and where you were trying to make connections with people as a result.
So where all that kind of came together was after I lost my dental career, I built my professional dance company. I built my business coaching company for dentists. I built Unleashing Influence, which became a social media agency. And when I moved to Nicaragua, which is where I'm sitting right now, I realized I'm sitting in paradise, spending 100 hours a week staring at the wall, well, actually staring at my computer screen, working my butt off and not enjoying where I'd been. And so I decided to, again, the theme, burn down the things that weren't working. So I'd sold off the dance company, I sold off the business coaching company, I sold off the agency part of Unleashing Influence. And that allowed me to pull in the best of all my skills into one brand. And it was very intentional with how I pulled that in. And what I did was I wrote out every skill that I had. And I was like, okay, which ones do I really love? If I could only do 3 of these things for the next 5 years, what are the skills that I would want to use in this brand? And so it allowed me to really organize, what were my unique talents, how I could package them in a way that was understandable to the marketplace. And so using, I do teach people how to speak and use their body on stage. I teach people how to use their camera, use the space properly, use their voice, create energy in a way that reaches through the camera and pulls people through. So it has been very intentional with what I post as my featured stuff on LinkedIn, because I want to showcase I can teach you to be an interesting mover. I'm not going to teach you how to do body rolls during your speech, but I will teach you how to actually navigate the stage and tell a story that has that physicality. So it feels like a more theatrical experience, especially if you're keynoting. You are there to set the tone. You're not going to sit there at the podium and just be kind of boring and be a talking head. You actually need to grab people and create an experience for them that is going to make the conference that you're representing amazing. And so everything that I do, I make sure that it points to that North Star of unleashing influence. You're trying to create influence. You're trying to I help people through their pivot. So you hear the word pivot a lot in my content. So there's keywords that I feed through. There's the topics that I use for my content all point to the same direction so that there is that congruency. So when someone looks me up and then they're going to meet me, they do have that good feel of who I am. And that's what we want, especially for getting on sales calls. You don't want to have this representation on camera of someone who's perfect. And then they come in and they're like, you're a mess, right?
Mhm.
Or you're really, really shy and you don't want to talk to them, whereas you were really exuberant on camera. So you have to allow yourself to be who you are and thread that through every opportunity that you have, whether it is content, whether it's sales calls, whether it's someone is going to see at a cafe. We need to see the same person all the way through, which is easy when you just are yourself, although that is harder said than done.
Well, you say harder said than done, and I had an experience years ago where there's a social media profile that I used to have that is me with a smirk on my face, and people would meet me for the first time, discover that I was very straightforward and orderly, and their perception was very serious, and they would then tell me, that image that's out there of you making funny faces and stuff, that really isn't you. And then I would start getting snarky and the real me would come out and they would go, oh, there it is. Now it makes sense. And I realized I needed to play into that more so that there was continuity.
Are you snarky? You don't come across as snarky.
I try to do that when we're not recording, just out of respect for you.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So let's talk a little bit about how you take these concepts of the personality that we're putting out there and use it in a systematic way to actually build a business around it, whether it's bringing clients closer to you or converting them or what have you. Because I see a lot of this, and I see a lot of it sort of out there, and then it leads nowhere. So there's got to be sort of an end goal for all of this, hopefully.
Yes. Well, you have to have a return on investment of your time and also of your money if you're going to be investing in doing your personal brand. Because even if you're just doing it by yourself, you're putting a lot of time to create this stuff. I hope at the end of it, you're increasing your sales. So when people come to me, I work with them in a 90-day mastermind format. So I start with them each one-on-one. They get 4 hours with me. I crack them open. I take a look at their soul. I take a look at how the world sees them. And I look at all their skills and I package together how they can leave their mark in their industry. So I give them a title, the something. And that becomes the through line for everything that they're doing. I go through brand archetyping so that they understand how they operate in the world, how their light side and their dark side can be applied in what they're doing, and how the different dimensions can be applied. So that sets the foundation for everything that they're going to be doing. It creates a playbook of the buyer personas, the kind of keywords like if they are helping people to pivot needs to show up regularly in your content. So you have those words that really represent what you're doing. Then in the 90-day program, we are going through 3 different phases. So transform your credibility is the first part of it. So how do we pick our topics so that we create a personal brand that is completely congruent? It's pointing towards what I call your North Star of what you're trying to accomplish. How do we thread our story through what we're doing in our content so we drag people down the rabbit hole so they go, oh, this person's been there, done that. They feel that little bit of pain, and then they are ready to take action to give you a call because they know that you are ahead of them. You've been through what they've been through, so you understand. Then we have our next phase, which is crafting your ideal audience. So, you can create all the content in the world that you want, but if people aren't seeing it, or they're not engaging with it, or they're not turning it into a sale, it's a waste of your time. So how do you stack the deck in your favor of reaching out to the right people who are ideal potential clients and ideal referrers of potential clients? Because these referrers over here are amazing. They will do the hunting for you if they have the same audience as you do. So they already have a set audience that they can be referring you to, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then, of course, the third phase is we want to attract ideal clients. So we want to have a methodology to actually get those sales calls. So I teach them, how do you do proper outreach on LinkedIn that isn't hitting people over the head with a pitch? Because nobody likes that, right? So it's conversational. It leads them into a group on their topic. So we're shaking people out. So we're not trying to go broad. We're going with ideal low-hanging fruit who we think is within that profile. We send them a message. If they reply, great, we've already narrowed it. Then if they join the group, we've narrowed it even further because they're interested in the topic that you're trying to do. Then there's messages that go out. You invite them to a call. If they get on a call, it's narrowed even more. So you are going from this really wide swath that you're going after, which you kind of have to, especially when you're starting new. You're not going to know exactly all the points about someone that is going to make them ideal. But you narrow it down so that when you do get on a phone call, you have a fan, you have someone who loves you, who actually has been watching your content and is like, oh, this person gets me. And then, I teach how to do proper sales calls so that you are able to close that person into your program, and then helping design the program as well so that people actually buy what you're offering. So those 90 days, they're a lot. People have a lot of work to do. They spend 3 hours in class with me, and then they have an hour to an hour and a half homework. But it's that intensive to get from 0 to 160 as fast as you possibly can. And what I want is that there aren't any gaps in their knowledge. So they're not going, oh, how do I set up a CRM? Most of them haven't heard of what a CRM is. So I give them the systems, I give them screenshots, they get my scripts of what I do. So it's a really comprehensive program so that you build that personal brand and you're making money off of it, which is the whole point.
That's awesome. The way that you've described it and some of the words that you've used suggest that this is for one type of a business, maybe coaching business or that sort of thing. But it sounds like it's more broadly applied to lots of different types of businesses. I'm curious if you can sort of talk about, outside of your program, how this concept could apply to somebody who's not necessarily running, a coaching business or even a professional services business, but might be part of a larger organization, for example.
Yes, and I do have people approach me from larger organizations who are like, okay, here's what I want to do. I have to keep my foot in representing the company, and then I also want one foot outside of the company. So I am preparing for the future. So if someone checks out my profile and I want to go on my own, or I want to lead companies, I am in a position for someone to be like, oh, you're amazing. So the same concepts still apply, whether you're doing it for your own business or you're doing it for your own brand within a company. But if you're straddling those two strategies, you just have to make sure that your company is good with what you're putting out there and you're representing the company. You may not have to have their brand stamped on it, but you're still subscribing to the philosophy of the company while you're showcasing who you actually are. And it actually strengthens the parent company when someone is actually creating a personal brand to represent the parent company, because now there's a face to the person who is doing the representation. So it's not this perfect corporation anymore. There's actually a human who's come to the forefront. Mm-hmm. And for some companies, it's scary because they also know if you're putting yourself out there and you're doing a really good job with your profile, you could get poached. But if you can be confident in it, someone is subscribed to you, it is actually a huge benefit for the company, especially if they're willing to invest in it themselves and you're not having to foot the bill. You have major upside, even if they do leave in a couple of years.
So for somebody who's not necessarily in a sales role per se, like, I am not the salesperson in my company, right? I have a partner who does that, and we have salespeople who do that. But I'm still interested in being seen and identified as, whatever I've chosen people to see me as. How does this apply, and where does that fit into all of this?
Well, oftentimes someone will be kind of the hook. So they are a thought leader, they have an expertise, they're well-spoken, they're able to get on camera, they're able to gain people's attention to actually get on a phone call. So it's just a matter of, if you're going to be passing them off to someone else, you just need to prepare people for that. And you need to write a pretty good script about why you're passing them off to that person, because they're amazing. You want to talk to them, like you have to talk them up so that you're representing it. And a lot of companies do that. They have a face, but there's a whole team behind it. And that face that is out there is not actually who someone is going to talk to. They are the hook. They are the attention grabber. They're the person who has the thought leadership that is interesting to the marketplace. So you can still have that team behind you, and it won't feel like a bait and switch as long as you explain it properly.
There's lots of different platforms, lots of different places that this exchange, this interaction and demonstration display, right, can show up.
Mhm.
One of the ones that you've chosen to focus on is LinkedIn, and I wonder if we can talk a little bit about, sort of how and why LinkedIn specifically, but where else can people, sort of leverage this personal brand concept?
On any social media platform, it's really easy to do. And so the concepts, you just need to know what the algorithm expects, what the audience on that platform actually wants from you. So it's funny because I used to be like, oh, we're just going to recycle our LinkedIn content to Facebook and Instagram. And it was terrible. It was so terrible. It did not do well on the other platforms. It killed it on LinkedIn. And it was like radio silence on the other platforms because I wasn't worried about shifting my perspective on how I was creating content. I was just taking the exact same thing, the thought leadership content that was great. It was smart. It was sassy. And it worked well on LinkedIn for the professionals I was trying to attract, but on Facebook, it failed. On Instagram, it failed. So, if you're going to pick a platform, you need to understand the platform. And you also need to understand where your audience is spending their time. So if they're all spending it on TikTok, you better understand how TikTok works. If they're spending it on LinkedIn, understand the way that people think on LinkedIn. And you always have to be playing that part of it. You're not going to change who you are, but your content, the way that you're presenting it, is going to be a bit different. The way that you write about it is going to be different. Even the hashtags. I see people who are Instagram friendly trying to use the same kind of hashtags on LinkedIn, and the people on LinkedIn are like, what are you doing? Like, this is a keyword search, really, when you're using those hashtags. It's not like special of the day. You don't write that on LinkedIn. So you have to really understand the platform. And if you can pick one that has your audience and they want the kind of stuff that you want to produce, run with that one platform, because you can go get really masterful at that, or you can become jack of all trades and really not be great on any of them.
So, a regular default answer to most questions I ask on this show are online related and social media related, but I imagine that this is also applicable offline in some ways, public speaking, book authoring, other things like that. Would that be accurate?
Yes. And when you understand what your personal brand is, it's easy to translate it to your sales calls, to how you show up in the world, how you speak from the stage. I remember I was part of a speaking competition and I made it to the final, and I was hoping I would make it to the final. And I had an idea for what I was going to speak on, but I hadn't written the speech and I was stuck. I was rewriting it 100 different ways. And my friend, actually Holly Mitchell, the one who did that testimonial, she's like, Angela, you're the arsonist. What would the arsonist do? She would burn everything down. And so that's what the theme became for the speech. And because I went back and tapped into my playbook of who I am, what I do, how I show up in the world, it made it really easy. But for that moment of doubt, I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know how I should show up. And so it was really challenging. And so when you know who you are and you have those moments of doubt, if you can go back to your playbook of who you are and what you're trying to represent and your North Star, it makes it easier to step back into your confidence and be going, okay, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I have value in this world. It makes a massive difference.
Yeah, I love that. The LinkedIn thing, I mentioned it before. You sort of alluded to it in terms of some of the places where people can consider based on where their audience is. You've picked that as a platform for you. You are very present there. You post there. You host a group there, etc. Can you talk a little bit about that world?
Sure. So for me, the clients that I go after are professionals. They are people who are trying to oftentimes pivot from corporate to doing their own thing, or they're in that coaching arena. And so they are playing on LinkedIn. And the kind of content that I create just fits really well with the way that their brains work. And that's why I picked it. Even when I started my dental coaching company, I went on LinkedIn because the business savvy dental entrepreneurs were on LinkedIn. They weren't hanging out on Facebook. They weren't hanging out on Instagram. They were hanging out on LinkedIn. And so for me, it was easy to build six-figure company just with my LinkedIn organic content, because the right people were sitting there. They were the right people I was messaging and getting on conversations with. So that's why I say, like, pick the platform that has the right mindset. It has, they want the kind of content that you're producing, the way that you produce it, because that's going to allow you to grow fast and not struggle with multiple different platforms.
Yeah. LinkedIn, you've chosen also to host a group there. You want to talk a little bit about what that function of that is, and if people are interested, where they can go to learn more?
Yeah, so the function of the group is to give content at a faster pace. So if you're looking at my personal profile, you're getting 1 video per week. In the group, you're getting 2 videos per week, so you're getting it twice as fast. There's also other people going through the same kind of change that you are. So they're going through their pivot, they're trying to build their personal brand. So it's a community of people who are in the same phase in their life, in the same phase in their professional career. And so the whole point of it is to give you inspiration, give you tips and tricks, give you executable things that you can do for yourself to help you with your personal brand, and also have people that you can connect with, and hopefully you can do some business in the group as well. There's lots of people who have something that someone else has to offer, or they have that same audience as someone else does, and so they can collaborate and look at clients' problems from the different angles and the different skills that they bring in.
So we'll leave a link to the group. It's called the Unleashing Influence Community. And who is it best for?
It is best for people who are either looking to pivot, or they are looking to start their personal brand or level up their personal brand. So depending on what phase you are, you're still going to get lots of nuggets, even if you're far into your journey, because it's the stuff that I teach my clients from beginning to end. There's lots of little knowledge drops in there. So you're going to get something if you're in one of those phases.
Excellent. Well, if you've been listening to Dr. Angela Mulrooney and heard something that suggests that you'd like to hear more, this is a great place to go to hear and learn and discover more about this concept, about yourself, and about your future personal brand. So once again, it's the Unleashing Influence Community on LinkedIn. We'll make sure to leave a link in the show notes. Angela, thank you so very, very much for hanging out with me and sharing some of your insights.
My pleasure. You asked really great questions, so thank you.
Oh, shucks. Folks, this has been More Perfect Marketing. If you know somebody who is trying to figure out their own personal brand or could somehow benefit from listening to this episode, please share it with them. Until next time, I'm David Baer, and this is More Perfect Marketing. Take care.